بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So we're picking up from where we left from the previous lesson in the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, يَحْفَظْكَ Allah, that Allah will guard you. So one of the things that Ibn Rajab rahimahullah has mentioned is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guards, protects people in regards to their offspring. In the sense that offspring can benefit from the righteousness of their parents. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, and Surah Al-Kahf, verse number 82, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, that is, their parents were righteous. And the idea that they received a good thing from, that is, the two children who had the wealth that was hidden for them, it was because of the righteousness of their parents. And so Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the well-known pious Umayyad Khalifa, he says, مَا مِن مُؤْمِن يَمُوتُ إِلَّا حَفْظَ اللَّهِ فِي عَقَبِهِ وَعَقَبِ عَقَبِهِ. There is no believer except Allah shall guard him in regards to his descendants and then descendants of descendants. That there is this benefit that children occur and other descendants from righteous men and women who are married and produce those children and those descendants. So this is one of the qualities and benefits of this guarding of Allah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala engages in the guarding of a person. And then there are these interesting narrations that come to us about how nature itself, or animals and particularly, are guided by Allah to protect or benefit individuals. There is a narration from Imam Tabarani in his Kabir, and it's with a Hasan Sanad, and Imam Hakim narrates it also as Sahih, that one of the free slaves of the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions here, كما جرى لسفينة مولى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حيث كسر به مركب وخرج إلى جزيرة فعسر فجعل يمشي معها حتى أزال له الطريق فلما أوقفه عليها جعل يحمهم كأنه يوعده ثم رجع عنه. Mentions that one of the free slaves of the Prophet ﷺ he lost his mount, and he came upon a lion, and this lion showed him the way. The lion didn't attack him, and when the lion had brought him to a point where this Sahabi, whose name isn't mentioned, understood where he was, the lion yuhahimu, that is, the lion roared, or bellowed out, such that it was as if he was giving him a farewell, and then the lion turned away from him. So this idea then that one way Allah will guard people is by manifesting nature to give them something of benefit. And we shouldn't be surprised. It's like that hadith about how if Allah loves someone, then there's this cascade effect through Jibreel, the angels through creation, and those creatures and things of creation love that person. So perhaps this is also in the rubric of that divine love and concern. He mentions also then that there are two types of hifth, that is divine of guarding. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guards a servant in regards to his religion and his faith. And he mentions this where a hadith from the Prophet, or some of the Salaf, the early Muslims, was said, and for example, in regards to guarding a person from doubt and things that may create intellectual or mental conflict in regards to religion and faith, that some of the Salaf, the early Muslims, and when a man would approach death, said that the angels say, Shamma Rats. And Shamma, it means to smell. So it's like, if you say the angel smells his head, it's not what it really means. What it means in Arabic, when use of shamma here, is that in a sense of to really inspect something, to look into something. So when you think of it, you have to smell something, you have to like get really close to them. So it's that idea. So the angels get very close to a person, and the angels inspect his head, and they say, and he says, and they ajidu fi ra's al-Quran, they find in his head the Quran, and they get close to his heart. And that is ajidu fi qalbihi siyam, they find in his heart fasting. And shammu qadamayhi, they get close to his 2 feet. Ajidu fi qadamayhi qiyam, they find in his 2 feet his standing in prayer. So in a sense, nafsuhu hafidhahu Allah, that they would say then this person guarded himself, so God guarded him. So the idea of the angels inspecting us when we are dead and coming close to us. And then a hadith from Sayyidina Umar on the Prophet ﷺ that he taught him to say, and this is narrated by Imam Hakim, also from Ibn Mas'ud, Allahumma ihfadhni bi-Islam qa'im, Allah guard me in regards to Islam standing. وَحْفِظْنِي بِإِسْلَامٍ قَعِدًا, and guard me in regards to Islam sitting. وَحْفِظْني بِإِسْلَامٍ رَاكِدًا, guard me in regards to Islam while lying on the side. وَلَا تُلْتِي فِيَّ عَدُوًا وَلَا حَاسِدًا, and do not make me and do not cause me to be in any way obedient to, submissive or under the control of an enemy or someone who has jealousy in regards to me. So this is a dua of the Prophet ﷺ given to Sayyidina Umar, and also for Ibn Mas'ud narrates it. And of course, a very well-known hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he would send a person, a person would leave from him and go on a journey, and the Prophet ﷺ said, أستودع الله دينك وأمانتك وخواتم أعمالك. The Prophet would say to that person, I entrust you to Allah in regards to your religion and in regards to your trusts and security, and in regards to the seals or the end results of your deeds. So this was a dua of the Prophet. So the idea that Allah, we entrust ourselves, or in this case, your family, or the Prophet in this case as the exemplar on that, beseeching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be a guarantor and one who is sufficient as a hafiz for that individual. So he mentions here, in Jumla, that summation, that by engaging in in the limits of Allah, in a sense of maintaining Allah's limits, avoiding the things that are prescribed, engaging with things that are permissible, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes between that person and corruption, fasad, with various types of divine protection. Some of those things you may perceive, and some things you may not perceive in your life. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Yusuf, verse 24, كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ سُوءَ وَفَحْشَاءَ وَإِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Yusuf, Allah Ta'ala says, in such that we turned from him su wa fahsha, that is evil and corruption. Indeed, he was of our servants mukhlasin, of those who were sincere. So the implication here is that because of Yusuf's ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala diverted from him corruption, sayyi'ah and fahsha. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anfal, verse 24, Inna Allah yahulu bayna al-mar'i wa qalbi. Allah comes between a person and his heart. And it's been said, what this means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes between a person in regards to ma'asiyah. There's ma'asiyah or sin which would tajarruhu ila nar, that would pull him or drag him into hellfire. And so then, from that, then the Prophet said in the hadith, continue, ihfad Allah tajidhu tajahak or amamak, that is, guard Allah and you shall find him in front of you. So this is, as the hadith continues, So this idea then comes up then, the idea of the this witness of Allah, this ma'iyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala says in Surah Nahl verse 128, Inna Allah ma'aladina ittaqu waladina hum muhsinun. Indeed, Allah is with those who have ittaqu, who have taqwa. Of course, that's a big understanding there to explain taqwa, and those who are muhsinun, those who engage in ihsan. Of course, I think both of those need to be explained. So Qatada said, yeah, it is one of the, I believe, if I remember correctly, Qatada is one of the, Tab'een, who was a student of Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and that he said, Man yattaqi la yakun ma'ahu, wa man yakun Allah ma'ahu, fa ma'ahu معه فئة التي لا تغلب والحارس الذي لا ينام والحاري الذي لا يذل. And I translate that, Qatada said, he who reverently fears God, that he, Allah, is with him. Whoever has Allah with him, he has with him a troop invincible, a vigilant watchman that never sleeps, a guide that never misleads. So obviously then this requires a little bit of a fleshing out of what taqwa is, and we won't be able to do that perhaps later, or something you want to look into yourself is this idea of taqwa, and to look into that. So ma'iyah then, this idea of Allah being with you, or Ibn Rajab mentions there are two types of ma'iyah. There's a general understanding of ma'iyah, and for its example, when Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, make sure I get this correct. So first of all, he mentions here that that there is ma'iyah mentioned in regards, for example, to specific people. For example, Musa and Harun. Allah Ta'ala said to them, "La takhafa innani ma'akuma asma'u wa ara." Allah Ta'ala says, "And do not either of you fear. Indeed, I am with you too." So here the dual, it's mentioned here. La takhafa, that's the two of you fear, and ma'akuma, I'm with you two. And so with you too, and do not fear. So this was something specific mentioned here in regards in the Quran in Surah Taha verse 46, in regards to Sayyidina Harun and Sayyidina Musa alayhim as-salam. And when the Prophet said to Abu Bakr Siddiq, when they were in the ghar, the cave, مَا ظَنُّكَ بِإِثْنَيْنِ اللَّهُ ثَالِثُهُمَا لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. And the Prophet said to Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, what do you think when there are two and the third of them, of these two, is Allah? Do not fear, for indeed Allah is with us. So here, this is a very a specific type of ma'iyah where individuals are specifically mentioned either in the Quran or in this case in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. But there is a general type of ma'iyah, a witness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Mujadala verse number 7, وَمَا يَكُونُ مِن نَجْوَى ثَلَاثٍ, there is not except in a secret gathering, a najwa of three, إِلَّا هُوَ رَابِعُهُمْ, except that He, Allah, is the fourth of them. وَلَا خَمْسَةٍ, and not five, that is five people in a secret gathering, إِلَّا هُوَ سَادِسُهُمْ, except that He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the sixth of them. وَلَا أَدْنَى مِن ذَلِكَ, or neither less than that, وَلَا أَكْثَرَ إِلَّا, or greater, except إِلَّا هُوَ مَعَهُمْ أَيْنَمَا كَانُوا, that He is with them wherever they might be. So this is in a general type of ma'iyah, this witness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we understand. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I had to really pushing this, aren't I? Like going through. You guys have to like follow your notes. You guys should have these like handouts. So I don't have any right now. So they were made available last week. So I kept mine. And mine got crinkles. So I had to like iron it this morning to make it flat again. It was like I had to iron my papers. I'm pretty bad about that. And of course, then we have these statements from righteous predecessors, the Salaf. The idea of often being asked, "Kayfa astawhishu," or how would I be bored? Istawhisha, the idea of being lonely, or I usually translate being bored. The idea of being by yourself. And you have these statements where they will say, Ruya on Bunan Hamal. Bunan Hamal narrates, he came into Bariya when he was alone on the path to Tabuk, and he was alone, and then a caller called out, Lima tastawhish alaysa habibuka mak. He said, how is it that you can be alone when, how can you be alone when your beloved is with you? That is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you. And some of them said, Allah tastawhishu wahdak, don't you get bored or lonely with yourself? And then they would say, Ana jalisu man dhakarani. And then they would quote, people often quote this hadith Qudsi, I am the jalis, the companion of he who remembers me. So if you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're never alone. If you don't believe the verses of the Quran, then you have, astaghfirullah, Allah is with you if there are three of you together, and Allah is the fourth of you. So if that's not there for you, then we have these early Muslims also reminding us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our jalis. Ana jalisu man dhakarani. I am the companion of the one who remembers me. So this is there for us to remind ourselves of that. And so then the Prophet ﷺ continued, Ta'arraf ilallah fi rakha yarifka fi shidda. The hadith then continues, be acquainted, ta'arraf, to be acquainted with Allah in times of ease, in things of ease, rakha. Allah will know you in times of hardship, shidda. So this is a conditional statement this conditional statement is that if you are acquainted with Allah, He will be one who knows you and when you're acquainted with Allah in times of ease. And then know that Allah will be with you in times of difficulty. Because most people then turn towards Allah when things are difficult. You got a problem, make a dua. You got a disease, you're ill, you make a dua. But you're healthy and you got money in the bank and you got everything's okay at home. You may forget Allah. It's easy to forget Allah when things are going good. And so the Prophet is reminding Abdullah ibn Abbas here that you need to know Allah at times of ease, because you will need Him. Of course, you need Him all the time, but you will need Him when things are going to be difficult. So, the servant of Allah then should be mindful of the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he should perform them, he should shepherd them properly when things are at ease. So when you're young, for example, and you have physical health and mental stability, and you got the capacity to do things, then you should be worshiping Allah. You should be doing things, engaging with Allah, because when you turn 47 and plus, like my age, and your back starts hurting, or and you wake up and your eyes are still trying to wake up too, and your eyes are going bad, it's like, this is like, I was thinking the other day, it's like, it's a good sign, I can't see anymore, I can't read anymore. I remember, 10 years ago, I could read that, I can't read anymore. So I'm getting old, I'm dying, like all of us are, we're oxidizing. Oxygen keeps us alive, it also oxidizes us, It's like rust, the rust of Allah. There's the rust on the heart, and there's rust of oxygen. Oxygen is killing us. It's true, So we're all oxidizing slowly, and as we go, we're falling apart. And that's us. And so, those are signs. It's like why the Prophet, the Sheikh al-Zani, the adulterous old man, is stoned. Why is he stoned? You should know better, these things, When your clock is almost, it's almost midnight, and you're still out there, doing things you shouldn't be doing. You haven't learned life's lessons. Then you're a fool. You're a fool. But a young man who goes out there and commits something wrong, young men do that. Otherwise you'd be old men, and that's it. So this idea then that we should know Allah. So then Imam Rajab gets Ibn Rajab rahimahullah gets into the idea of ma'rifah. The idea of what is ma'rifah? What does it mean to know Allah? This idea of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when he talks about ma'rifah, he says there is there is a general type. I like these terms. There's this am, there's general, and there's khas, there's specific. So he talks about amanat khasa, this idea of a specific type of ma'rifah, the idea of knowing. So ma'rifah generally is like the arifa ya'rifu, and as opposed to alima ya'lamu. So the idea of to know, but the idea of really knowing. Irfan is to truly know something. Well, ilm may be having a cognizance of something, but not necessarily a in-depth understanding of it. But ma'rifah is really usually understanding of a deeper type of knowledge when we understand that. And particularly in the spiritual tradition, ma'rifah sort of takes that nuanced understanding. So he said, "Ma'rifatu khasa taqtadi mayl al-qalb ila Allah bikuliyah." When you have a true deep ma'rifah, it makes your heart mayl ila Allah, that it wants to lean towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa inkita ilayhi, and that it breaks itself in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It attaches itself. Wa uns bihi, and cause you to develop this unsiyah, this desire for intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you enjoy, you get this sort of sakuna, this stillness and fullness and tranquility in His remembrance. Like I was on a train once in Istanbul on the Asian side, and I was going back to the Göztepe. It was like this, wow, what's that? I told you to turn those things off. That's not even like a buzz, man. That's like vibrate. Sounds like we're being hit by a semi. It's as bad as yours. Yours goes wow. What is that? Yours makes that sound. I don't know. These ringtones are so weird. It's like I have a rare bird. Here's my purple crested flycatcher phone ring. There are only 3 left in the world, and they're all male. It doesn't look good for them. So we were on this train, and I was started talking about Allah, and the people sort of like. Hyderpasha station, Hyderpasha, and you go towards Göztepe, right? So, my father had his house in Göztepe, Göztepe, that area, is Baghdad Jadasi, very sort of like Western, and people have pet dogs and all that stuff, and right next to the mosque is a McDonald's, so that's like it. So, so I started talking about Allah, and people literally walked away from me. They were moving away. I think that they were literally uncomfortable about someone talking about Allah on the train. So it's like, if you don't have irfan, then you resist Allah. If you don't strive for deep knowledge, or you don't even have it, if you're not engaging yourself in deep knowledge of Allah, then you resist Allah. And so, this is the irfan, yadur al-hawla arifun, which the arifun, the knowers, the agnostics, the deep knowers of Allah, that they are centered on this type of knowledge. And so it's said here, some of them have said, some of the early Muslims have said, Masakinu ahlu dunya kharaju minha wa ma dhaku atyaba ma fiha qilahu wa ma huwa. One of these arifun, these knowers of Allah, lovers of Allah, said, the orphans, or masakin, the real poor one, orphans of the world, of ahl dunya, people of the dunya, they are those who exit the world and not tasted the sweetest of things that ever was in it. And they was asked, well, what is the sweetest thing? Atyabu ma fiha. What's the sweetest of thing that's in the dunya? And he said, ma'rifatullah, knowing God, truly knowing God, is the sweetest thing you can have. And that's true. There is nothing, physical pleasure, there is something about knowing Allah which you cannot measure out as being something amazing, wonderful. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Man la yaduk la yadri. He who doesn't taste doesn't know. You can talk all you want about, I don't know, something delicious. I don't know. I can't think of something delicious right now. Like a coffee. That's not too good, especially with Starbucks. You can talk you can describe all you want these things, but until you die, you don't know. So you have to dive into these things to understand them. And then there's the ma'rifat amma, this general knowledge, deep knowledge of Allah. And this is, okay, that's the first thing he mentioned. So I should maybe, so let me go back here. So that was the specific type of ma'rifah you have as a servant of Allah. And then I skipped a part here. The general ma'rifah that you have, all of us can have, is the ma'rifah that we have iqrar bihi, that is iqrar of knowledge of God in our hearts, that settles in our hearts. And tasdeeq, and we affirm it, and we have iman. So this is a ma'rifah you have. For if you have tawheed in your heart, and you've affirmed Allah, this is a gift of Allah. And this is a salvific, type of knowledge of Allah that you have. So it's maybe what Abu Hanif would call the idea of iman having istiqrar in one's heart, or tasdeeq bil qalb, that you affirm Allah truly in your heart. So that is something you have through iman, and this is what the believer has, the mu'min. And then of course the idea of the ma'rifah I've already covered here for those examples is that where it's that tasting of what this is. Like the Prophet's language of hawt al-iman, the sweetness of iman, if you want to use that language. So that, or though, the idea of tasting something is how we should understand. Then of course, there is this ma'rifah where Allah has a ma'rifah of you. Where Allah is alim, He's knower. So in a sense, what then is this ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The general ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is when Allah ta'ala says, for example, in Surah Al-Qaf, verse 16, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. Indeed, we have created man, and we are knowing of that which he whispers, of what his soul whispers to him, what his internal conversation is. Allah is aware of this personal waswasa, this personal internal dialogue. And Allah Ta'ala says in Surah An-Najm, verse 32, هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِكُمْ إِذْ أَنْشَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ وَإِذْ أَنْتُمْ أَجِنَّةٌ فِي بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ. He is the best of knowing of you, أَعْلَمُ, of you, in regards when He brought you forth from earth, and then you were as fetuses in the wombs of your mothers. So this idea that Allah knows you when you were just matter, and before that matter was brought together in the womb, as it's brought together, and that janeen, the embryo, is being formed, even before then Allah knows you. Of course, this is nothing we don't know, but this is what we should know. This is how Allah knows us generally. And then he mentions this idea of the specific idea of ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the ma'rifah that you get when we get, for example, in the well-known hadith Qudsi, وَلَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ. A servant doesn't continue to draw near to me by optional acts of worship, حَتَّى أُحِبَّ, until I love him. فَإِذَا أَحْبَبْتُهُ كُنْتُ سَمْعَهُ الَّذِي يَسْمَعُ بِهِ. When I love him, I am the ears which he hears, وَبَصَرُهُ الَّذِي يُبْصِرُ بِهِ, the eyes by which he sees, وَيَدُهُ الَّتِي يَبْتِشُ بِهَا, the hands by which he grasps, وَرِجْلَهُ الَّتِي يَمْشِي بِهَا, and the leg by which he walks. فَلَئِنْ سَأَلَنِي, if he asks me, لَأُتِيَنَّهُ, I shall most certainly give to him. وَلَئِنْ اسْتَعَاذَنِي, and if he seeks refuge from me, لَأَعِيذَنَّهُ, I shall most certainly protect him. This is a unique type of ma'rifah, when Allah is giving you the special attention. And of course, for that is one of those, that's well-known hadith Qudsi here, what Imam Nawawi actually gives a commentary to in his 40. He mentions it, and of course, it's an important hadith in the deen. Is used also the idea of when a person is totally engaged in Allah in a state of fana, in that Sufi context. This is one of the proofs of the idea. This is what you can understand what it means, that Allah is totally engaged in the individual. Of course, it has different meanings what that means, but one would be that the eyes, the ears, the limbs of the body everything is in agreement with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in obedience to Allah, and in proper placement with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they make mistakes due to the person's own inherent qualities, then those things then are immediately corrected with tawbah and istighfar. And of course then dua being accepted. And maybe that becomes manifested. Understand this then, we have a narration of Sayyidina Hassan when he was fleeing from Hajjaj, and he entered the house of Habib Abi Muhammad. And this Habib Abi Muhammad said to him, Ya Aba Sa'id, he's speaking to Al-Hassan, Alaysa baynaka wa bayna rabbik ma tad'uhu wa yastiruka min ha'ulai? Is there not then between you and your Lord whom you call out to, that he shall cover you, or he shall hide you from these men, from those who are chasing you? Udkhul bayt, enter the house. فدخل, so Hassan entered. وَدَخَلَ شُرَةُ, and the police, and that is the shura, the police, or the police of Hajjaj entered following. They were coming after Hassan, and they didn't see him. When they entered the house, they didn't see him. Hajjaj, and Hajjaj was told about this, and he said, "Bal kana fi bayt," he was in the house. Illa an Allah tamasa ayanahum falam yarahu, except Allah veiled their eyes so they couldn't see him. The idea then that Al-Hassan was protected from being caught, though he was there. So this is, and look how I love this, how this Habib and Muhammad says, is it not between you and your Lord a dua? I mean, can't you just ask Allah to protect you? So you can think about, the confidence of Al-Hassan when he says, yeah, I can pray now to Allah. Thank you for reminding me. And Allah can, make me not visible. Most of us, we make such a dua, we do it, with a pinch of salt and cross our fingers, and inshallah Allah will accept my dua. When you throw a pinch of salt and cross your fingers at a dua, well, that's not much of a dua at that time. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man sarrahu an yastajiba Allah lahu inda shada'id fayukthir du'a fi raha." A person who desires or would love that Allah would answer his dua when there are afflictions, let him make dua to Allah in abundantly when he is in ease. Which we've already covered that before. And the Haq ibn Qais said, "Udhkurullah fi raha, yadhkurukum fi shiddah." Remember Allah in ease, remember you in hardship. He said, وَإِنَّ Jonah alayhi salam kana yadhkuru Allah ta'ala. Yunus alayhi salam remembered Allah, right? فَلَمَّا وَقَعَ فِي بَطْنِ, when he was in the whale, in the stomach of the great fish or the whale, called ta'ala, فَلَوْلَا أَنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ مُسَبِّحِينَ لَلَبِثَ فِي بَطْنِهِ إِلَّا يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. Had he not been of those who musabbihin, those who glorified Allah, he would have stayed until Yawm al-Qiyamah in that fish. The idea, why did Yunus get that protection? Because before he got to that place, he was magnifying Allah. وَإِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ, and Pharaoh, كَانَ طَاغِيًا, he was an oppressor. نَاسِيًا, forgetting Allah. فَلَمَّا أَدْرَكَهُ الْغَرْقُ, and when the water was coming over him, قَالَ آمَنْتُ, he said, I believe. فقال Allah says, الآن وقد أصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين. And now and before you committed isyan, rebellion and sin, and now and you were of those who were mufsidin, who were corruptors. So look at that, subhanallah. So you want to protect yourself? Be of dhikr and dua when you can right now, when things are easy. So when the affliction comes, you've got that there as a testimony. And this is the evidence that this Dhahak ibn Qais gives, why you should remember Allah in good times to reap the benefits of that when times are difficult. Of Yunus alayhi salam and Firaun, may Allah curse him. So there are many narrations about these ideas of remembering Allah in ease and following up on that, and expecting and being confident that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond to you when things are difficult. And of course then we have, I'm looking here through one, for example, إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا. Surah Fussilat, verse 30. Indeed, those who say our Lord is Allah and then they are firm upon that, angels shall descend upon them, saying, do not fear, do not be in sorrow. And it said that what understanding this is that they will protect them at the time of death and in their graves and on the day of resurrection. So in this life, you believe in Allah, as the Prophet said, believe in Allah and be steadfast. And what will be the fruit of that? You have angelic protection by Allah's permission for you. So we need to be mindful now of our lives now. Don't wait till you're in retirement to make your tawbah. Your retirement plan tawbah is a fool's game. You have to do it now when you're capable of doing it. When you're not like Pharaoh at the end, when the water's coming over you, then you think you're going to be okay. I believe now. May Allah protect us. The Prophet continued to say, إِذَا سَعَلْتَ فَاسْأَلْ اللَّهَ وَإِذَا إِسْتَنَعْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. And so the Prophet said, if you ask of Allah, and when you seek assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is derived from the verse of Allah, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, in Surah Al-Fatiha. And only you, O Allah, we worship, and only you, O Allah, we seek assistance. And the Prophet said, Ad-du'a huwa ibadah. I should mention, Ad-du'a mukh ibadah. Ad-du'a is the brain, mukh, it is the quintessence of ibadah. It is the kernel of ibadah. It is that which makes ibadah real, is calling out to Allah. Okay? Engaging with Allah through speech. There is this BBC Radio 4 program, and it's a 4-part series on language, the history of language, and how what really distinguishes human beings is language. Language. And it so goes through, about different early languages, and then earliest written languages that were real written languages, and then how they were, and so like cuneiform in Mesopotamia was one of them, and also early Chinese characters. And interesting, early 1500 BC Chinese characters were really characters, like a tiger was really like a little cat figure, and it was like really funky, they were like real pictures. How those pictures today have morphed into contemporary Chinese script, but many Chinese can still read those 1500 year BC Chinese, because there's not much change at all in those, in the I don't know what the correct term would be right offhand, but those pictures that are the language that represent meanings. And the idea that really distinguishes us as human beings is language. And so we're given the sifat of Allah, kalam, is very important. This engaging in Allah through this gift of complex symbolic means of communication through language, whether it's spoken or written. So Allah Ta'ala says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ, and your Lord, and your Lord says, Ud'uni, call out upon me, astajib lakum, I respond to you. Surah Al-Ghafir, verse 60. So when in a hadith, the Prophet said, إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَأَسْأَلْ اللَّهِ, when you ask of Allah, and if you seek assistance of Allah, فإن السؤال لله هو دعاه ورغبة إليه. The asking of Allah is calling out to Him and a desire and desire for Him. Du'ahu ibadah, and supplication, it is ibadah. And the Prophet is narrated from Nu'aman ibn Bashir that he recited this verse of Surah Al-Ghafir, which I gave to you in regards to this. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, ask Allah of His bounty. The Prophet said, Sallu Allah min fadlihi fa inna Allah yuhibbu an yus'al. Ask of Allah of His bounty, for Allah loves to be asked. And in hadith from Abu Hurairah, which is marfu', man la yas'al Allah yaghdab alayh. He doesn't call out to Allah, Allah is angry with him. So we want to cultivate a culture of dua at all times, particularly as we already had covered in times of ease. Allah Ta'ala says in regards to taqwa, man yattaqillah yaj'alahu makhrajan wa yarzuquhu man min haythu la yahtasib. Okay, stop it. Wow. Gravity. He who fears Allah, whoever fears Allah, this is Surah Talaq, verse 2. He who has taqwa in regards to Allah, Allah will give him a means of release, makhraj, and provide him min haythu la yahtasib, from means he cannot measure, where he will not consider it. Allah will give you a means of provision. That is if you have taqwa. So we need to cultivate this. And in the hadith particularly on the night when you get up for tahajjud, the hadith, hal min da'in, is there not one who calls out, a person making dua, فَأَسْتَجِبْ لَهُ, that I shall respond to him. Hal min sa'il, is not one asking, فَأُعْتِيَهُ, that I shall give him. Hal min mustaghfirin, فَأَغْفِرْ لَهُ, mustaghfir, is there not one seeking forgiveness that I can forgive him? This is a well-known hadith, Qudsi, about the virtues of getting up for Salatul Tahajjud. I need to cut something short here. We will on now with the hadith. The Prophet continued saying, جَفَّ الْقَلَمُ بِمَا هُوَ قَائِن. The pens have dried, the pen has dried of that which exists. Or in the narration, the other narration, Rufiyat al-Aqlam, the pens have been lifted, وَجَفَّت al-suhuf, and the pages have dried. That is, this idea of the taqdeer, the qadr, and the qada, the decree and measure of Allah in regards to things. Of course, it's a really big topic, and it's more than we can cover here on this type of discussion. It's a big discussion on aqidah, so we need to be mindful of that this needs to be further discussed in maybe in a different venue, a different time. Allah says in Surah Hadid, ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير. There's ما أصاب, nothing hits. Asaba means to hit. Nothing strikes or hits from any musibah, affliction, in the earth or within yourselves, except it is in a book. It's in a kitab. From before, we brought it forth. Nabra'aha, we brought it forth. Allah, bara'a means to create. In dhalika Allah, you see, this is easy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that from Abdullah ibn Amr, Inna Allah kataba maqadira khala'iq qabla an yakhluqa samawati wal ardi bi 50 alf sana. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote the decrees of creation, or the measures of creation, before He created the heavens and the earth by 50,000 years. So the idea that this decree of Allah precedes His creation itself is there. So we certainly, we'll get to this, and then we need to contextualize this and everything that we've been reading up in the hadith so far. We'll go back through it. And the Prophet ﷺ continued to say, فَلَوْ أَنَّ خَلَقْ جَمِيعًا أَرَادُوا أَنْ يَنْفَعُوكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهِ وَإِنْ أَرَادُوا أَنْ يَضُرُّوكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَكْتُبْهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ لَمْ يَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهِ. And the Prophet ﷺ continued, and if creation, all of it, or people, all of them, wanted to benefit you with something Allah has not qada, has not decreed it, they will not have the capacity in that. And if they wanted to harm you, versus benefit you, if they want to harm you now in anything Allah has not written for you, they will not have the qadr, the qudra, the capacity to do that. So we've already quoted the verse from Surah Hadid, and then there is this verse from Surah Tawbah, verse 51. Qul, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. Nothing shall afflict us except that which Allah has written for us. And Abu Darda narrates from the Prophet saying, "Inna likulli shay'in haqiqa." Everything has a reality. وَمَا بَلَغَ عَبْدٌ حَقِيقَةَ إِيمَانٍ. And no servant shall attain to the reality of Iman حَتَّى يَعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَا أَصَابَ, until he knows or is aware or is cognizant of the fact that whatever hit him لَمْ يَكُنْ يَخْطِئَهُ, would not have missed him. وَأَنَّ مَا أَخْطَأَهُ, and whatever missed him لَمْ يَكُنْ لَا يُصِيبَهُ, would not have struck him. Like I said, this is a large point of discussion, and I can't get into that today. If we have a class in Aqidah, then we'll inform you of that. And if we get into a class of Aqidah, we can discuss in more detail the idea of this qadr and qada in more details. But as we continue with the hadith though, the Prophet said, وَعِلَّمْ أَنَّ فِي صَبْرِ عَلَى مَا تَكْرَهُ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And know my cousin Abdullah, that in sabr, in steadfast consistency on that which you dislike, there is much good. Okay? And from Ibn Abbas, appendix to this narration, it is, فَإِنْ إِسْتَطَعْتَ, if you are capable, أَن تَعْمَلْ, if you are able to act in regards to Allah بِرِضَى فِي يَقِينٍ, in regards to Allah with certitude, فَفَعْل, do that. وَإِنْ لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ, and if you're not capable, that is, you're not capable of this, that's having steadfastness in issues, and that is being content with Allah's ridha, فَإِنَّ فِي صَبْرِ عَلَى مَا تَكْرَهُ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Just having steadfastness in that which you don't like, there is even good for you in that. So there are two things there. One is that you're content with the ridha, you have this ridha with what Allah has given you. Well, that's a higher level. Okay, one thing is to have steadfastness and patient consistency in the situation, even though you don't like the situation. But not to like the situation means you're not content with Allah. So if you have karaha in you, if you don't like the situation, that means you're not content with Allah. So you're still not perfect yet. In a sense, if your faith can be perfect, it's in agreement with Allah and ridha. But if you can't have that, then have sabr then with whatever comes. And even for that, there is good for you. You're not going to lose out to have sabr in things you don't like. This is what we should take away from this. Okay? And of course, I think I have here page 486. 486. Here, there are other narrations here. trying to see what I wanted to quote here. So he mentions here that Ibn Rajab Hanbali that the highest degree is having rida whatever comes to you. He said, "An yarda bidhalika fahadi darajatan aliyatan rafiya." This is the highest station to be in. Allah Ta'ala says then, "Ma asaba min musibati illa bi'idhnillah wa man yu'min billah yahdi qalbahu." In Surah Taghabun, Allah Ta'ala says, "There is nothing that hits of any affliction except by the permission of Allah. And he who believes in Allah, Allah shall guide him, shall guide his heart." That is, to have this faith in Allah, and faith, a part of faith being an understanding of accepting the qada and qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will strengthen your heart in that. Allah will strengthen your heart in that. And this is that your heart will be given contentment in it. You'll be given contentment whatever comes to you. The Prophet used to say in his own dua, "As'alaka ridha ba'da qada." Oh Allah, I ask of you contentment after the decree. That which is manifested, give me contentment with that. So the Prophet is encouraging us that whatever comes to you as qada and qadar, which is measured in your life, pray to Allah that you will have ridha in that. As these things unfold in your life, that you are accepting of all these unfoldings of your life. This is even in the dua of the Prophet. Then there was a bit of poetry here I like. He says, "Adhabahu fika adbu wa bu'duhu fika qurbu wa anta indi ka ruhi bal anta minha ahabbu hasbi min hubbi anni lima tuhibbu uhibbu." The poet said in regards to afflictions, the pain of the affliction, but it's in you, O Allah, adbun. So he plays on a play of the word. Here, adb means something sweet that you drink. وَبُعْدُهُ فِيكَ, and the distance which it may create, but it's within you, O Allah, qurbun, is nearness. And you, وَأَنْتَ, with me, are as my own soul. But anta minha ahab. No, O Allah, you are even more beloved to me than my own soul. Hasbi min hubbi, sufficient is it in love, anni lima tuhibbu uhib, that I am loving those things which you love. The poet says this, that greatest love is what? That you love whatever Allah has given you. Whatever it is. You love that. This is what love is. And then I will, have to continue here then, looking at time constraints as we move through. And the Prophet continued, وَعِلَّمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ صَبْرٍ. And know therefore, O Abdullah, that there is assistance in steadfastness. There is assistance in steadfastness. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 249, قَالَ الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو اللَّهِ كَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah Ta'ala says, and those who perceive that they will meet Allah, مُلَاقُو Allah, they will meet Allah, the liqa of Allah, they say, how many of a small band have defeated a greater number by the permission of Allah? And Allah is with those who are steadfast. So the believer, if you know you're going to meet Allah, if you know you're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you know that He's with you, He answers your dua, that whatever happens is because He's created it. So you have no, and you don't know every moment as it unfolds before you what's coming your way. And so you confirm it, you affirm that intellectually, you affirm that into yourself internally. You make it something of an aspect of certitude within yourself, and you know then that whatever comes to you, even if you're a small number, you can have great victory, but you have to have steadfastness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Batal, one of the Muslims of the past, was known for his bravery. He said, Ash-shuja'a, courage, ash-shuja'a, or bravery, sabru sa'atin, is being steadfast for a moment. If you want to know what being brave is, it's having sabr for a sa'a. It's having steadfastness of a moment. And particularly in issues of jihad, the Prophet ﷺ said, "A mujahid man jahada nafsuhu fillah." The mujahid is the one who struggles with himself in regards to Allah. That is, you struggle with yourself. And Umar used to say, when he was asked about jihad, he'd say, "Ibda bi nafsik," begin with yourself. Fajahidha, struggle with it. Wa ibda bi nafsik, faghzuha, begin with your own self, have war with it. You have to have war with yourself if you want to be successful in anything. If you want to have the sabr that is described in a military language, militaristic sabr, steadfastness in conflict, you have to have steadfastness with yourself first if you want to be victorious. May Allah make us of those, inshallah. And I quoted this yesterday in the Jummah khutbah, this beautiful hadith of the Prophet. لَيْسَ عَدُوكَ الَّذِي إِذَا قَتَلَكَ أَدْخَلَكَ جَنَّةً وَإِذَا قَتَلْتَهُ كَانَ لَكَ نُورًا عَدَى عَدُوِّكَ نَفْسُكَ الَّتِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ. It is not, your enemy is not the one that you slay, the one who slays you and causes you to enter paradise. Or that when you kill him, you get light, or you get a reward. Like, this is light, this is good deed, right? Your most difficult or the greatest enemy of yourself is your own, of you is yourself, your nafs, which is between your two sides. And inshallah we'll have victory. The Prophet said, "In the nasr ma sabr," victory is with assistance, with steadfastness. And he said, "In the farji ma karab," and release is with affliction. Karab means like an affliction. Okay? And farj means like a fissure where you escape through a crack. That idea. Right? And so the Prophet mentioned this. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Shura, verse number 28, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا قَنَطُوا وَيَنْشُرُ رَحْمَتُهُ. It is Allah who sends down abundant rain after that which they've gone through in dryness. And He manifests or spreads out His mercy. So it's like this ground. After the drought, there is rain. That is the farj ba'da the karb. That is the fissure release after the affliction, is the rain. Now, qanatu also means the idea of calling out or being or supplicating to Allah, like a qunut, right? So if we interpret it that way, the Prophet said, "Dhahaka Rabbana min qunut ibadi wa kuriba khiyarihi." Allah Ta'ala laughs. Of course, that needs commentary. It's an expression of Allah's ridha from the supplication of His servants. and He causes them to draw near out of ghiyadihi, out of this pride. Allah has pride, ghiyad, out of pride in His regards to His servants who call out to Him. And Yaqub alayhi salam said to his sons, Ya baniya idhabu fatahassasu min Yusuf wa akhihi wa la ta'su min ruhillah. O my sons, go out and look for Yusuf and his brother, and do not despair of the rawhillah, of the mercy of Allah. Go out. Trust in Allah. And the Prophet said in the hadith, it continues, فَإِنَّ مَا الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, and in hardship there is ease. Allah says, Surah Talaq, سَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرٍ يُسْرًا, Allah shall give after hardship ease. That's Talaq, verse number 7. And Allah says in the Shahr, verses 5 through 6, فَإِنَّمَا الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, إِنَّمَا الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, indeed, with hardship there is ease. With hardship there is ease. So this finishes up the hadith. Let me go quickly back on this point to make a quick synopsis of what we've covered. I had to really rush through stuff, but that's just how life is sometimes. So in this hadith then, as we quickly make a synopsis of it, the Prophet ﷺ is reminding Abdullah, after calling him, addressing him as young man, I will teach you some words. Okay? He wants him to get these words down and know them. Be mindful of guard Allah, and God will protect you. You preserve God, God's going to preserve you. Keep Him in front of you. When you guard Him, when you preserve Allah, you're going to always find Him in front of you. He's going to be leading the way, so to say. Everything that you go as you move your life forward, there will always be Allah there. So that sort of then ties in with two things here. One is that Allah is knowing your affairs. Allah is creating the situations you're in. So that then ties in very well the idea of qadr and qada there, because everything is unfolding before you. As you keep Allah in front of you, in that language, everything in front of you is being manifested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that means what then? Whatever is in front of you then, if you need to ask for anything, you're going to ask Allah. If you need assistance, you're going to seek it from Allah. You should know that whatever these things that come before you are manifested before you, whether of people and the things around you, that if they all gather together, because they're also created by Allah, they're also creatures of Allah. If they come to benefit you, they can't do it. And if they come to harm you, they can't do it. Except that what Allah has laid out before you has already been in the divine decree, because it's also part of the decree. Whatever they do or don't do is already in that manifestation of the divine creative act and His knowledge as things manifested for you. I want you to picture it as like a time, an arrow of time as you're moving forward in it. And these things are constantly unfolding for you. And so it's like Ibn Arabi says that in every moment God is creating creation new, okay, in His cosmology. So you have this constant, so everything before you that is physical or metaphysical, everything in that language is being manifested before you. So it's all in the divine craftsmanship. So even those people who want to benefit you, it's in the divine craftsmanship. And those who want to harm you, it's in the divine, craftsmanship. It's all there. So that's what you should understand. Have that confidence. So address yourself to the one who is the manifester of everything. The Badi'us Samawati are the one who brings forth the heavens and the earth and all that, and وَمَا فِيهِمَا, and what's ever within them. That's everything. Right? وَإِنْ اجْتَمَعُوا عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَضُرُّكَ, and they gather to harm you, لَمْ يَضُرُّكَ إِلَّا بِشَيْءٍ قَدْ كَتَبَهُ اللَّهُ لَكَ. They can't harm except anything Allah has already written. It's already been manifested in the divine knowledge and the activity. رُفِعَتِ الْأَقْلَامُ وَجَفَّتِ الصُّحُفُ. The pens have dried, have lifted, and the pages have dried. So then it goes back to the other narrations here, the idea then of having consistency with God when you're approaching things to get help. As your isti'ana, you're seeking assistance, so in your nasr and your help that you want, then you have this understanding then that by then engaging only with Allah, I'm going to properly address the creator and manifester of everything that is coming before me, as it's meeting me on this arrow that I'm moving forward in, as I keep Allah in front of me, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if in those things there is a fissure, a farj, it'll be there. There's always movement for you in these things. And whatever appears difficult for you will be made easy. So how do you then, so when you have this I mindset, and this is an imani mindset then, on that basic mindset then, is that you have to keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the real creator of everything. And this is a very principal aqidah point there, is that if you don't understand that, if you sort of have this idea that God's out there, or God is there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there, but some of the things in creation are independent of Allah, then you can never even understand to begin what this hadith is talking about at that moment. Because you've already have the first building block, the most foundational thing, you don't have properly set in motion, in place. And that is what? That everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what our Sunni scholars say. And they mean that very seriously. And of course, how are you going to have that certitude? Is you have to engage with Allah. You have to have this dialogue with Allah. You have to be mindful to worship Allah with intensity of an intense worship of Allah, and break down the things, the barriers that prevent you from being able to know God as God is. And there's two levels of knowing what God is. One is you have to break down the barrier of false intellectual beliefs and sound aqidah, and you have to then break the barrier of the veils of the nafs. Because while you're in this world, there are veils, as the hadith says, that between Allah and His servant are 70,000 veils of light and darkness. So you have to break those veils. And then that is the exposure to ma'rifah. May Allah want to give us that. It's a very beautiful hadith. And so I just about did keep it on time. It's only, oh wow, it's 10:46, so we're late.